Hello, today I decided to join two models together in one review. It will be two super affordable TRN models. Basically you can get money for them just walking the street and looking down and picking up quarters. In few days you can get enough to buy both of these models. So TRN CS1 is a single dynamic driver and price is less than $10. And ST2 is typical hybrids with single dynamic driver and single balanced armature, and price is about $14 or even below. Of course, I will add links to the AliExpress shop in the description, and these prices are dirt cheap. And it makes this model perfect solution, I don't know, for cases when you can break them or someone can break them, damage them, I don't know, for kids or for some gift, of course, not for those people whom are you really caring about, but anyway, it's I hope that it could be also in interesting models, because TRN proved that they can tune earphones nicely too. And recently affordable segment became more and more interesting. Complicated triple hybrid models appears like Geek World and CCA announced model with electrostats for about, I don't remember, $25 or so. I didn't check the facts, but they stated that they use it. But anyway, today let's go back to these two models and let's have a closer look. Package is traditional, simple cardboard, nothing fancy, but looks pretty okay. So here are CS1. Accessory set is pretty obvious. You'll get a cable and additional tips, so everything like we can expect. So two pair of tips, cable, that's it. So let's put it aside. Warranty card and ST2, similar matchbox like style design. Also plastic cover here. Need a good shake to be pulled out because it will wiggle down. Here are earpieces themselves, stock cable. Let's put it here to see the difference, and also pair of tips, warranty card, so pretty traditional. In terms of the design, also what we can expect here: plastic case with fancy shining faceplates, looks pretty fancy. Here is driver itself and spout, actually metal spout with lip with protective grill. So I like when spouts are made of metal, it makes everything a bit better fitting. And of course wearing comfort is normal, they fitting nicely into ears, providing slightly above average sound isolation because of the normal size. So in this aspect it's a pretty good model. And cable here is just regular 2 pins, no recessed pins, no recessed sockets, so absolutely classical 2-pin type of connectors. And the stock cable we've seen many times before. It's pretty soft, not something super audiophilic, but it behaves well, has low microphonic effect that additionally reduced by these ear hooks. A bit tangling of course, but for this price tire I don't see any sense in being grumpy or complaining about the cable at all. And here is hybrid model ST2, a bit different approach to the design. As you can see, shell has more ergonomic shape, but actually sometimes it can reduce ergonomic a little bit, but in my ears it feels perfectly, and I like that transparent, absolutely transparent shell. And like when I was a child, I always wondered what's inside of different things, and I broke a lot of stuff just to see what's inside. And here no need to disassemble them, it's easily visible. So dynamic driver and wires go into the spout that hints that some balanced armature receiver is located in the spout. Also metal spout, lip, protective grille, okay, build quality. So not super fancy in terms of design, but at the same time looks pretty okay, providing also slightly above average sound isolation. Wearing comfort is good for me, but it depends on ears, of course, it could be a bit subjective. And stock cable here, bit more advanced. I probably think that probably the extra price here goes just for this cable. Used that QDC style connectors with recessed pins, nicely fitting, good combination of transparent connector and transparent shell, ear hook and soft cable, nicely braided, looks fancy. Of course it's not something audiophilic too, but at least it looks and works okay. So to summarize this part, in terms of exterior, both models are just what we expect. And you know, for me they even overcome expectations, because I'm still curious how it's possible to make anything that cheap. And of course about the sound, I gave both earphones about 40 hours of burn-in. Not like I expect some changes, and it didn't happen, but you know, the small probability that some models changing sound with burn-in exists, so I need to keep these formalities. Let's have some player on the table. Actually, Ibasso DX300 does its job driving these earphones pretty nicely. And actually it drive almost anything pretty nicely. And you know, in terms of sound, I really like that TRN tuned both models in V-shaped manner, but actually they didn't overdo that, and it's not like typical V-shaped signature, but still, of course, accent on the low frequencies and treble is present. Difference is pretty obvious. This one is a bit more convenient tuned with slightly less treble and with more bass, and this one is a bit more natural and actually brighter. I've read some complaints about the excessive brightness. For me it's not crossing the margin, but probably let's talk about both models one by one. So bass here is accented. Accent isn't big, isn't small, probably we can call it average or moderate or reasonable, so it's just the proper amount of low frequencies to my ears to sound fun. It's not over-colored model in this aspect. Resolution is normal, like slightly above average, of course not something superb, but you know, we live in the era of pretty good dynamics even for the cheap receivers, so for few dollars you can get a pretty normal dynamic drivers. So depth is good here, and main accent is done on the main mid bass, but deeper layers of bass is present. Control is better for the mid bass and upper bass. Lower bass is controlled worse, but at least it's present and gives you that tight body and a bit of enjoyable signature. And as an example, it's probably one of the tracks that is usually used with such models. It's the Antwoord Cookie Thumper, nice engaging bass line, and thanks to the boosted upper mids, good contrast with Yolandi's vocals. Mid frequencies are a bit recessed comparing with lows and treble, but they have also okay resolution, once again not stellar, but actually normal. And they have proper distribution of weight. Luckily, there is no attempt to make focus on the micro contrast or vice versa, highlight the macro dynamics, highlight emotions, add additional weight. This model doesn't try to add some excessive coloration. Of course, it's lacking a bit of naturalness, it's lacking a bit of small overtones, it lacks refinement, but we're speaking about the $9 earphones, so I'm feeling a bit silly telling about that. They sound normal, no big issues, actually also no small issues. The main issue of this model that they don't sound like $100 earphones, but it's probably what we can expect. And they have average imaginary stage, not too big, not too narrow, so pretty normal here. Actually, they are a bit picky for the quality of records, not super picky, but actually better masterings can be distinguished from the worse mastered things here, and it's also a good sign. And of course, they have a traditional spike on the upper mids to add additional clarity, to add a bit of aggression, and so on. And another example of music that is probably often used with such earphones, it's Metallica's Master of Puppets. And of course, in the ideal world, this track requires faster model, more natural, more refined, and so on. But actually it sounds pretty enjoyable with these earphones. Much better than earphones that I used to use when I started my long journey in the Metallica's world way back in the early zeros. Anyway, of course lacking definition, lacking a bit of resolution, but still not too squashed, not too muffled, and with slight hint of additional aggression that this track requires, and because of that sounding okay. Treble is boosted, but not overdone. Maybe if you're super sensitive it can be too much for you, but to be honest, I don't think that many people will complain about treble here. It's pretty typical dynamic drivers on the treble with slightly slower attacks and decays. Of course, it's not super natural, there is a hint of that metallic sound, but at the same time they don't sound too sibilant or too sharp. Extension is average, and in this price tier it's a good idea not to make super extended treble. And actually, example I've selected a bit complicated, it's Snarky Puppy, The Simple Life. Different percussions, lot of instruments with overtones that goes to the treble areas, and it's a hard load for even pretty high-end earphones. And of course this model isn't even close to sound perfectly here, but still you can at least get the idea of this track, you can enjoy it. Not as much as with more expensive models, but actually still pretty audible and pretty enjoyable. And let's pretend like we're changing that and go back to the original track. So this model is tuned a bit more natural and brighter. So if you're not a fan of bright signature, you can skip this review to the end. I will do some short comparisons with that few models that I can recall. But anyway, actually bass is pretty linear, there is a slight accent on the low frequencies, but not too much to my ears. It's a bit better defined than here and with slightly more resolution, but with a bit less weight. Actually, even not a bit, it's noticeably less weight, but still when necessary it has a good punch. It's kind of drier low frequencies with more resolution and with bit better texture representation and sounding slightly more natural thanks to that improved resolution and better overtones. And the Antwoord here once again, less bass but a bit tighter impact and probably less fun way of listening of this track, but still pretty nice and engaging. Mid frequencies are less recessed comparing with this model, but still done in pretty similar way. Not superb in terms of resolution, but normal. And on the upper mids, where balanced armature starts playing, they became bit focused on the micro contrast, bit less weighty, and sounding more forward and aggressive. So if you don't like aggressive representation on the upper mids, it's not a model for you. But normal resolution, pretty good imaginary stage, above average both in terms of width and depth, and probably it's we need to say thanks to balanced armature driver here. And it's fun to read some reviews when people saying that yes, they have a good stage and nice clarity, but at the same time they can be sound sharp. But actually, it's often a matter of there is a coherence between these two factors. Better, more defined treble makes sound sharper, but at the same time, it's often making stage bigger. Not always, but in many cases it does. So, pretty good stage and slightly more audiophilic experience with more focus on the detalization. And actually, you know which track is coming here. Master of Puppets by Metallica. Bit better resolution, bit more defined guitars, bit more aggressive representation, so you'll get it in a bit more angry way. And the treble here, I've read some complaints that treble here is super bright, and actually I prepared myself to sound something super sharp, but to my ears they are not crossing the line. They are close indeed. On poorly recorded tracks with sources that poorly control treble, of course they can sound sharp and sibilant and metallic, but with proper tracks and proper sources they still remains bright, but staying under control. And it's kind of main difference between these two models. Here treble has faster attacks and decays, and treble is more balanced armature-like and less weight, giving you a bit more of air and breeze. Extension is still just about average, no super extended treble, but it's still for good in this aspect. So, in terms of pairing, both models can be used with smartphones, of course, especially with good audio source, and some simple digital tonal converter can improve things even further. Speaking about the conversions, main competitor here is EDX by KZ. I've seen that KZ released some updated version of EDX. I didn't test it yet and not sure if I will, but current version of EDX more bassy, more warm with less treble, so it's for those who like more weighty and massive sound. For me this model is slightly better because I'm a fan of more present treble. And here main competitor is KZ ZSN Pro X. And Pro X is more V-shaped with bigger bass and more recessed mids and more boosted treble. So for me, once again, this one is a bit better choice because it's more forward on mids and a bit better defined on treble. But keep in mind the difference isn't big between all that models in the affordable price segment. They have a slightly different representation, and representation actually it's a matter of choice and it's just a matter of subjective taste. So I prefer TRN tuning a bit more, but it's not more than just my tastes. So I really like that I've had an opportunity to review these two models. They proved, at least for me, that in the affordable segment there are nice and models that can be listened. Thank you for listening, thank you for your attention, and of course have a nice day.